Hi everybody, I'm Asha Blake, and for my individual log project, I did the psychology of a psychopath. I did this project because I thought it related well to my major. I'm majoring in psychology, and also in the future I hope to major in criminology. And so I kind of put the two together and came up with the psychology of a psychopath. I wrote a paper and I did a quote murder kit like you can get online, where you get all the information and you have to try to figure out who did it, you know? There's definitely reasons you could suspect somebody else, but like I kind of try my best to throw in little hints to who it was, and I'll tell you who it is at the end of the video. I'll start off though with my slideshow that I made. So my individual log project is on the psychology of a psychopath. What is a psychopath? A psychopath is defined as a mental disorder in which an individual manifests immoral and antisocial behavior, shows a lack of ability to love or establish meaningful personal relationships, expresses extreme egocentricity, and demonstrates a failure to learn from the experience and other behaviors associated with the condition. It is possible for them to feel emotions and love towards people that they care for, that they have close to them in their life, like a parent or a sibling or a significant other. And then also I have here the definition for a sociopath, because it is called, like my presentation is on the psychology of a psychopath, but I also talk a lot about sociopaths because they're similar, but they're also very different. So a sociopath is defined as someone who has an antisocial personality disorder, or ASPD. People with ASPD can't understand others' feelings. They'll often break rules or make impulsive decisions without feeling guilty for the harm they cause. So next we have psychopaths versus sociopaths. So for psychopaths, it's more superficial charm, or the things that really coincide with psychopaths are superficial charm, high intelligence, poor judgment, and failure to learn from experience. Pathological egocentricity and incapacity for love, lack of remorse or shame, impulsivity. Basically, a lot of these things, it's just, they're good at manipulating people. They're good at getting what they want and they don't feel guilty about it. People see a psychopath as someone who is cold and heartless and inhumane, because they are incapable of showing the same feelings that the average person would. A sociopath, however, there are seven main things that somebody would need to be diagnosed with an antisocial personality disorder. They need at least 3 of the 7. So 1 is doesn't respect social norms or laws. They constantly break laws and overstep social boundaries. 2 is they lie, deceive others, use false identities or nicknames, and uses others for personal gain. 3 is they don't make any long-term plans. They also often behave without thinking of the consequences. 4, they show aggressive or aggravated behavior. They constantly get into fights or physically harm others. 5 is they don't consider their own safety or the safety of others. 6 is they don't follow up on personal or professional responsibilities. This can include repeatedly being late for work or not paying bills on time. And 7, doesn't feel guilt or remorse for having harmed or mistreated others. So that's the basics of a psychopath versus a sociopath. Next we have, are they born or made? So I have only 1% of psychopaths are considered to be genetically created and diagnosed with ASPD. They have an inability to perceive or register the emotions of other people. And the most prominent factor to play into most people becoming psychopaths is trauma, mainly whether the person has been abused in their childhood, whether physically, mentally, or sexually. And either way, a psychopath is not evil, but instead ill. So I'm going to touch on all of these topics really quick. First, what I found out is that you can be born with an antisocial personality disorder. Only 1% of psychopaths are actually considered to be diagnosed with that and have it from birth. So only really 1% of psychopaths really and truly are just born psychopaths. The rest of the 99% of them, though, are created in their childhood. So if they have some really, really, really traumatic experiences as a child. Another thing about a psychopath is that they have an inability to perceive or register emotions of other people. It's not just themselves, but because they don't feel emotions, whenever somebody else is feeling an emotion, they can't really figure out exactly what they're feeling. But the thing is that either way, a psychopath isn't evil. They're ill. Like somebody with another type of mental illness. It's a mental illness. They were rather born or created at a very young age, so they didn't choose to not be able to feel things or register feelings. And another thing is that not all psychopaths or sociopaths end up being serial killers or anything like that. Some people can go their entire lives not feeling emotions and not creating major crimes. At the end of the day, it is a mental illness that people have, and it's not necessarily their fault that they can't register those emotions. Like I said, not all psychopaths and not all sociopaths end up being serial killers, but I just wanted to touch on 4 different cases where they did, where a psychopath ended up being a serial killer, and then touch on their childhood and why people believe that they became a psychopath. So first we have Ted Bundy. So everybody recently has been talking about Ted Bundy. There's movies, documentaries that have come out about him. So a lot of people already know these things about him, but he is known as a psychopath. All the people that I'm mentioning right now are psychopaths. It's actually really hard to find somebody that is a sociopath. So Ted Bundy is a psychopath, and he's an American serial killer that most people know. He was born into a Christian family to a mother who was out of wedlock, so that's not allowed. She wasn't married when she became impregnated with him, and she wasn't married when she gave birth to him, so her family sort of shunned them because it's not how it was supposed to go. And so in an attempt to fix that, his grandparents decided that they were going to raise him and tell him that they're his parents and that his mother is his sister. So people claim from a young age, he claims to have always felt like his life was a lie in some way, and that people around him were lying to him, because they were. And he could sense that from a young age. So many people believe that this reason is what drove him to become a psychopath. So he confessed to killing 36 women, but experts believe it could be any more than 100 victims. The next person that I wrote about was Robert Pickton. A lot of people actually don't know who Robert Pickton is, but he's Canada's biggest serial killer that we know of. So basically, he, as well as a psychopath, but he's also the one that I thought could be a sociopath, because whereas Ted Bundy was seen as very outgoing and charismatic, as people who are psychopaths usually are perceived, because they're so good at manipulation. A sociopath is usually really antisocial, and from a young age is seen not hanging out with people, not hanging out with friends, like not getting along with society as a whole. And that's something that Robert Pickton showed at a young age. So he's a Canadian serial killer. He was raised and ended up owning his family pig farm. So at a young age, one day his brother went out for a drive in the family car. I can't remember exactly where he was going, but he probably had somewhere to go. And he ended up accidentally hitting one of the neighbors with the car, and the neighbor died. So he drove back to his house to tell his mom. And his mom, Robert, and the brother actually ended up picking up the body and getting rid of it. And this is when he was just young. And so that people believe that was probably kind of a turning point in his childhood. Another thing is he had a very abusive father, and he murdered anywhere from 6 to 49 women. Now just like a quick little explanation for what happened in my murder kit story. I tried my best to make it seem mostly like the person it was supposed to be, but then also I wanted some evidence against me and some evidence against other people. I just admitted it wasn't me. Sorry, it wasn't me. I wanted it to seem like if you just skimmed it, that it was somebody else. I also think I could have made it too easy to know who it was. But anyway, I made Darcy out to seem sort of like a self-centered person. She's not in real life. It's revealed like Ethan was flirting with some math girl, And then he shows me, I'm upset. Parker says, oh, Jenna was in his math class. But then between messages between Jenna and I showed that Jenna actually knew who the girl was and that she said she would talk to her in math class. So that rules that out. I was ranting with Jenna in the upstairs bathroom. Darcy says in her thing that she heard me like yelling at her. We were fighting, but we weren't fighting. The whole thing is supposed to be that she was ranting with me and that we used to do that all the time and stuff like that. There is something that I brought up in the beginning. I kind of placed the statements in a way that hoping that you'd forget things I mentioned by the time you get to the bottom. So it's like you have to go back and look at it kind of. Something that I did mention is that my downstairs bathroom was being renovated. That's why we went to the upstairs one, which was directly across from Darcy and Parker. There is one faulty thing that was kind of like the main thing I was hoping people would realize, and that's whenever Parker says that he didn't feel well, and so he went to the downstairs bathroom. So was Parker. Pretty much, is what I'm saying. The clues that I was trying to give out, I guess what happened is supposed to be, because it was hinted at a lot that Jenna wasn't interested in Parker and she was starting to see other people. So Parker made out with Darcy upstairs, and Darcy mentions, oh, I think Jenna was suspicious, really casually. So Jenna was supposed to be suspicious, so she goes to confront Parker and talk to him, and then he gets angry and pushes her, and she smacks her head on the dresser and passes away. So some hints that I had thrown into the Parker scenario was that he was the only person in his written statements that constantly referred to Jenna as deceased, because in this thing she was supposed to have like just died. Like, we just found out that our friend was dead, and so I tried my best to make it so, like, me, Darcy, and Ethan were all referring to Jenna as, like, Jenna is such a nice person. She doesn't deserve this. All that kind of stuff, whereas Parker was saying, like, she was really great, like, referring to her in the past tense. Something else was that Darcy and Parker both had B positive blood. And one of the things mentioned in Darcy's suspicion thing is that they found B positive blood. So that's supposed to be something that was like suspicious of Darcy, but then if you keep going down and you pay attention, you see that Parker also had B positive blood. So it's not mentioned underneath him, but it's mentioned underneath Darcy. So he's supposed to be able to put those two together, kind of. Anyway. So that's my individual log project. Thanks for a great year, everybody. I'll see you, hopefully, around campus next year.